10 years ago, a young man named Max Verstappen joined the Formula One grid. And from day one, there was a lot of conversation about this driver, with many saying he was going to be the next big thing. Well, when he debuted with the Red Bull Formula One team in 2016 and won his first ever race with them, those conversations got a lot louder. And one slightly angry Austrian man, no, not that one, I'm talking about Toto Wolff, realized he missed out on potentially one of the best Formula One drivers ever. And since 2016, that's been eating at him. I can only imagine it's gotten worse, watching Red Bull and Max walk all over Mercedes in the recent years. So when a young Italian driver quickly started to dominate the junior series, much like Max Verstappen had back in the day, Toto was quick to sign him up and not make the same mistake he made with the toot guy. If you watched any Formula 2 last year, you'd have at least heard the name
Kimi Antonelli
mentioned. In fact, you probably heard it mentioned a lot.
Antonelli.
That's because about 65% of the broadcast time of any given Formula 2 race was spent by the commentators just talking about Kimi Antonelli. As Lewis Hamilton was off to the team that provides a free therapist in your contract, the rumors of Kimi Antonelli going to Mercedes were very strong. And almost everyone was expecting Max Verstappen 2.0 to be rocking up on the 2025 grid. Not because all of the F1 viewers are stupid, genuinely because that's what we were all told. However, that's not really been the case. And I'd even argue that there's two rookie drivers who've acted far more like prodigies in this season of Formula One. Kimi Antonelli started out his Formula One career with a crash during an FP1 session last year at Monza, right before he was set to be announced as a full-time Mercedes driver. At that point, everyone looked at each other, had a little laugh, and went, I hope that's not a sign for things to come. And not to spoil the story, but it was a sign of things to come. 2025 did start strong for Kimi Antonelli. In Australia, he finished just behind his teammate in P4, being one of only two of the rookies to actually even cross the line in that race, which, if you remember, was in very difficult conditions, or as I like to call it, your average day in Manchester. Plus, during that race, Antonelli pulled off some pretty spectacular moves, like flinging it around the outside of Alex Albon, catching him half asleep. Then fast forwarding to Miami after a couple consistent results, Kimi puts it on pole, albeit in a sprint race, but that's still pretty impressive. I do think he then went to the Lando Norris School for race starts because he dropped back to 7th by the sprint finish. After that, Kimi suffered some bad luck and a crash in Monaco, which in my eyes is fair enough. This is what Max Verstappen did in Monaco when he was a rookie. And as for the other DNFs, this year, Mercedes engines have been about as reliable as your dodgy uncle's wiring, meaning you can't really blame Kimi for the engine issues that have plagued him. After that rough run in Monaco and Imola, it seemed that Kimi was back on form, earning his first ever podium in Canada, very well done, where his teammate took the win. But since then, oh, how things have gone downhill. Supposedly, Mercedes had put some upgrades on the car that made it difficult for Kimi to drive, or maybe they just stopped feeding the young Italian pizzas before the race. But even after they removed that and bought a dedicated stone-baked pizza oven, things haven't really picked up for Antonelli. And looking at his whole season, maybe things just haven't been so great after all. There are a few things that are very easy for me to point out. The terrorism charges he picked up during the Dutch Grand Prix. If he went to the Lando Norris School for race starts, he must have also been to the Esteban Ocon School of avoiding penalties, as by the end of the race, he had 15 seconds worth of them, plummeting him out of the points and into 16th.
Easy top three. Easy top three. If I'm not 16th!
16th? Or at the Italian Grand Prix, spinning out in free practice and getting the car stuck. Kimi doesn't seem to have much luck at his home races, does he? In all fairness, I went to the Italian Grand Prix and I thought Kimi did okay. In qualifying, he was right behind George Russell.
Did you see where the Mercedes were? They were in 6-7.
But then I looked at the results and realized at the end of the Grand Prix, he finished in 9th behind a Williams and a Sauber. And I heard he'd been following the track limits at Monza about as closely as this.
But here comes Sebastian Vettel! battle.
We can even take a deeper, more statistical look. And things aren't great for Kimi there either. Keeping it simple with the qualifying head-to-head between Russell and Kimi has only out-qualified George twice, and one of those was in the sprint race in Miami. And as for outscoring him in a race, Kimi is yet to even do that. That's right, every race this season, George Russell has finished ahead of his teammate. But okay, he's a rookie up against an experienced teammate. What do you expect? Well, let's compare to somebody else on the grid, who I think personally may be more deserving of the Prodigy title. Before I tell you that though,
We have started the Crash Happy podcast, where occasionally we talk about Formula One.
5 of your favourite Formula One YouTubers all on one channel.
As long as your favourites are Dan, Not Applicable, Formula Duck, Mr. Pulse, or me.
Every week, there will be a new episode of this podcast where we discuss all things Formula One and not Formula One, like hotels burning down or getting absolutely wasted for fun.
It's not just going to be podcasts, we'll also be playing games, getting up to mischief in real life, and much more.
So, if you want a more laid-back F1 podcast or channel with some great personalities, hit the subscribe button now. Or, if you prefer, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
So, welcome to Crash Happy. We didn't write an outro in the script, so I guess everyone just say an outro on 3. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Thank you for watching, guys.
Please
Back to the
subscribe
past.
to the new channel.
30 years ago, Nicky Lauda told us, if you put a trained monkey into the cockpit of the car...
Man, shut the hell up.
let's talk Gabriele Bortoleto. I just know my accent is gonna be mocked for that. Who gave Gabriele Bortoleto a bottle of water, mate? Gabby won Formula 3 and Formula 2 back-to-back as a rookie. You know who the last driver to do that was? Oscar Piastri, the current championship leader. Honestly, I'm genuinely thinking when Alonso retires, or at this point I should say if Alonso retires, Bortoleto may become my new favorite driver. But I'm not gonna replace you. I won't replace you. At the start of the year, Bortoleto was in by far the worst Formula 1 car on the grid. And many pundits were beginning to say that the F2 champ didn't deserve to be there. But Gabby didn't let that get to him. And the second half of the season has been just amazing for him. He's out-qualified Hülkenberg in 10 races, and Nico's only managed to do the same in 6. And while Nico has beaten him more often in Grand Prix, Bortoleto has still finished ahead of him 6 times. And given how most of those times have actually been quite recently, if you look back at the end of the season, Bortoleto and Hülkenberg's race head-to-head will probably be a lot closer. Now, I'm not saying Nico Hülkenberg is on the level of George Russell.
I'm stronger. I'm smarter. I'm better.
Nobody else on the F1 grid can be that posh. Seriously, I do think we can all agree Inspector George is in his prime, whereas Hulk is nearer the end of his career. He's got that podium now too, so he's probably just given up. But I would expect Kimi to be matching George's pace a little more than he has been, at least out-qualifying him a few more times, more like Bortoleto has. Plus, compared to Kimi Antonelli's war crimes on the track, almost every weekend now, Fernando Alonso and Gabriele Bortoleto have been having some spectacular on-track battles together, with the racing from Gabby's end only seeming to have got more and more precise as the season has gone on. I mean, just take a look at this drone strike from Saudi Arabia to then the brilliant game of attack and defense in Austria the two had, and after the race they had so much fun they went and hugged it out and were like, great racing, bro. That is driver progress. I don't think Gabby is the only driver this season who's arguably shown more talent than Antonelli, and this other driver honestly has to take rookie of the season, at least so far. Well, aside from Fernando, of course. He'd murder me if I said otherwise. I'm talking, of course, about Isaac Hadjar.
Who's your favorite driver?
Obviously, Isaac Hadjar. My favorite driver is Isaac Hadjar. He's a friend. He's a great guy. Amazing driver.
Hadjar's season started... well, it didn't start. During the formation lap of the Australian Grand Prix, he took advice from the Lance Stroll school of formation laps and put it in the wall. This led to scenes of Hadjar walking back in Anthony Hamilton's arms and crying, with Helmut Marko ready to drop kick him back into Formula 4. But since then, Hadjar has been clinical. Qualifying is 11-3 in his favor. The races 10-3 in his favor. And I'm not saying Liam Lawson is a Russell or a Hülkenberg. Evidently, he's not. But he does have more experience than Isaac, at least going into the season, but it feels criminal to even compare Lawson and Isaac when Hadjar in the Racing Bulls team, the second Red Bull team, is 9th in the championship and is the lead second Red Bull driver. May I remind you, he's the only Red Bull driver this year to have not driven the actual Red Bull car. Not only that, he's been out in Q1 once the whole year. In Japan, he made Q3 while his balls were being squashed in the cockpit. I've just realized why they call it a cockpit now. Way! I'm here all week. And in the Netherlands, while Toto's supposed Prodigy was doing his best to be banned from Italy forever, Isaac was on the podium in a racing bull. Even some of the most on-form drivers on the grid in arguably slightly better cars, like Alex Albon, are yet to score a podium. And I know you can argue that's because Oscar Piastri put a C4 in Lando's engine, but as they say, to finish first you have to finish. Do you know what makes all that even better? At the start of the season, no one rated Hadjar. He struggled to win any championships in his junior career.
I destroyed the cow! No!
Even just missing out on the F2 one last year, despite having more experience in the series than Bortoletto. When I did my rookie predictions at the start of 2025, I assumed Isaac would have the least interesting career of all of them, only ahead of Jack Doohan. At least I was right about that.
I destroyed the car!
I'll be honest, there was one man who was rooting for Hadjar, and it was actually Helmut Marko. But the general rule of thumb is to normally believe the opposite of whatever Helmut Marko thinks. Since Australia, though, Hadjar has been running on a completely different level. Not making mistakes like Antonelli, and if he keeps it up, he'll be demoted to the Red Bull team next year. Isaac, pal, you better start smashing it in the wall a few more times. The real reason Hadjar does so well, of course, is because he's subscribed and watches the long-form content. Seriously, before I continue, I do want to say a little thank you to my channel members. Their support really does go a long way and it means a lot. You can become one from just 99p a month. Thank you so much to all these guys you see on screen. Sorry for yapping a little bit, but I genuinely appreciate it. Let's talk about the difference between these drivers and Kimi Antonelli. Some say Antonelli should have had more experience in F2, but then I say Bortoletto only did the 1 year there. And Verstappen, all of those years ago, he f***ed off F2 entirely. I think Kimi does have the talent. He's showing us he's got the talent. You don't get poles and podiums by being slow. The one thing Kimi does have is the pressure. Mercedes is a completely different environment to Sauber or Racing Bulls. Sauber store their Formula 1 car in a barn because it's a tractor. Mercedes store theirs in a nuclear bunker because Toto Wolff is worth 60 bajillion pounds. Last year, Sauber finished last in not just the championship, but in almost every race. When Joe scored a point, they celebrated it like it was the World Cup. But in Mercedes, before the season even began, people were speculating on when Kimi Antonelli would win his first race. The difference is that if Hadjar finished this season without his result in Zandvoort, without being on the podium, it'd still be seen as a magnificent driver performance, as getting a podium wasn't expected of him. So now him having one only adds to the hype. Bortoletto had mostly been out-qualified by Nico Hülkenberg and only scored a couple points. People would be impressed that it's more than Bottas got last year. And fair play, Nico's more experienced. But Kimi getting the podium in Canada is the bare minimum for a Mercedes driver. Him being out of the top 5 is seen as disappointing. The expectations are so much higher. And obviously, Mercedes is a faster car than Racing Bulls or Sauber, but we know rookies get so much less testing than they used to. And they got no testing outside of the preseason test in the current 2025 cars. Even Verstappen, when he first entered Formula 1, would have had a lot more testing beforehand and was given a year and a half in Red Bull's junior team. That's valuable time to learn racecraft, to understand strategy, and most importantly, make mistakes, but without all of the eyeballs of the world on you. Obviously, there's been solutions tossed at Antonelli. One of them was to have left him in Formula 2 for another season, as him being the youngest driver on the grid does mean he has the least experience. But with how much Toto Wolff was banging on and on and on about him being amazing, he kind of created a problem for himself there. If he did leave Antonelli in F2 for another year, maybe another team would have snapped him up, turned him into Formula 1 spaghetti, and spat him out. Alpine. Then Toto would have lost out on a driver he truly believes in. Also, F2 is barely representative of Formula 1 these days anyway. Some of the drivers who perform well in F2 can be painfully average in Formula 1, or even just terrible. Look at Nick de Vries. The other option many people actually assumed Toto would do was to sign Carlos Sainz to Mercedes for 2025 drive and pop Antonelli into the Williams, much like how George Russell started his career. The issue with this is that Sainz didn't want to sign a one-year deal, which is fair enough if he knew he'd probably be binned off for Antonelli once it was finished. And if Toto left Kimi in Williams for more than a year, he again risked another team chewing him into spaghetti and alpining him. So it kind of left Toto stuck. He was basically forced to sign Kimi to the main team or risk losing him and making the Verstappen mistake again, which fair enough after his recent performances, some people would have said isn't that big of a loss. As much as I've tried to defend Kimi a little bit there, things do need to improve for him. Toto, despite loving him like his own son, has finally slandered him in the newspaper, saying that Italy was an underwhelming result.
Oh, great heavens!
It's not the worst criticism we've ever seen. He's not exactly gone on Sky Sports and said, yeah, Kimi's a proper knobhead. But maybe we should just cut him a little bit of slack. Because Baku was arguably just what Kimi needed. He managed to out-qualify, and albeit quite ill, George Russell. And although he wasn't able to beat him in the race, a solid P4 is what Kimi needed to bounce back from the poor form he's had over the last few races. So for now, it's not all over, or whatever YouTubers normally say. We've got a hell of a lot of really good rookies on the grid this year, and Antonelli's just gonna have to keep proving himself with some good results. If you agree, disagree, or even have fingers, press the subscribe button. So good at this. And a massive thanks again to these legends, the channel members. I really do appreciate it. You guys are awesome. Hope you're all having a lovely rest of your day. Please tell me your opinions down below and go check out the podcast. Goodbye!